About 7 years ago, I'd already graduated from college, but I wasn't employed, not because I had some grand plan, but because I was the kind of person who didn't move until life was practically breathing down my neck. I crammed for exams at the last minute, and I lived the same way afterward too. I kept telling myself, it'll work out somehow, and I kept floating from one part-time job to another, like that counted as a direction. It was midsummer when my friend Kay and I were sprawled around my place doing absolutely nothing, the two of us half melting in the heat, when he suddenly said out of nowhere, "Let's hitchhike across Japan." It was so random that it sounded like a joke at first, but within minutes, we were talking like it was inevitable, like we'd been waiting for someone to say it. Before I go further, you need to understand what Kay was like. We went to the same university. We met at the entrance ceremony, and he was one of those people who could talk to strangers like they were old friends. He also chased women relentlessly, shamelessly, openly, like it was a hobby he'd trained for. He moved in a disjointed, almost predatory rhythm, his head and hips swaying in two separate, unnatural conversations that made you wonder if something else was pulling his strings. But he wasn't creepy in the way you're imagining, not the calculating kind. Underneath all that, he was bright, straightforward, and almost aggressively honest, the kind of person who didn't really know how to hide what he felt. He caused drama because of women, sure, but guys still liked him because he had that rare trait. He never pretended to be someone else. And for whatever reason, out of all my friends, he was the one I clicked with best. We were opposites in every practical way, but somehow we matched. Our plan, if you can call it that, was laughably simple. We'd fly up to Hokkaido, the northern island, and hitchhike all the way down to Kyushu in the south, basically crossing the entire country by relying on strangers. That was it. Kay, of course, had an additional goal, delivered with absolute confidence, like it was a normal travel objective. We should hook up with at least one local girl in every region we passed through. I wasn't as loud about it, but I'll be honest, I wasn't traveling with zero expectations either. Kay wore his long hair tied back, he had that friendly service worker attitude, and it helped that he actually worked part-time at a club, so he knew how to read people fast and keep conversations smooth. Whenever we went out together, he had a way of pulling the whole atmosphere in our favor. So we prepared. He requested a long vacation from his job. I was already looking for something else, so I quit mine entirely. We bought plane tickets to Hokkaido, picked up big backpacks, stuffed them with clothes and the basics, set aside cash, and told ourselves this was going to be the kind of trip we'd brag about later. 3 weeks after the idea was born, we were on the plane. We landed in Sapporo, ate lunch, wandered around the city like tourists, and by evening, I was exhausted from the flight in a way that surprised me. I went back to the hotel early. Kay disappeared into the night. He didn't come back. The next morning, I finally saw him in the lobby, strolling in like nothing happened, wearing a grin that didn't even try to be subtle. He flashed an okay sign with his hand, like we were partners in crime. I didn't ask questions, I didn't need to. And that was when our hitchhiking actually began. Neither of us had ever hitchhiked before, not even once. So there was a nervous excitement to it, like we were about to do something forbidden but harmless. We didn't have a mileage goal, no schedule, no, by this day, we should be here. Our entire strategy was, we'll go as far as someone takes us. In our heads, it felt romantic. In reality, it was brutal. We stood there with our thumbs out for an hour, and nobody stopped. And after enough rejection, you start to feel stupid. like the road is laughing at you. We tried to keep morale up with stupid theories. Kay said maybe it would be easier at night, that people might feel more adventurous, more willing to help. Then, about an hour and a half in, someone finally stopped. It was a short ride, just into the city, but we celebrated like it was a victory, because it was. It meant the trip had actually started. And Kay's theory, annoyingly, turned out to be correct. Night was easier. The best rides came from long-haul truck drivers. They were already traveling far. They were used to the road, and most of them weren't interested in messing with two broke guys with backpacks. We covered real distance that way, and we met surprisingly decent people. By the third day, we'd even developed our own little system. If the driver was a trucker going long distance, we'd give them cigarettes as a thank you. If it was a normal passenger car, we'd offer candy or a small snack pack. We bought supplies at convenience stores and kept them ready. Cigarettes, especially, got the best reaction. Like it made the whole exchange feel more legit to them. When we got rides in regular cars, Kay carried the conversation so smoothly that the atmosphere almost always stayed friendly. A few times, we even got picked up by cars with only women inside and, without getting into details, there were moments that made Kay's ridiculous regional goal feel less ridiculous. On day 4, we reached Honshu, Japan's main island. By then, we'd found a rhythm. Taste local specialties when we had the chance, enjoy the small connections we made with people we'd never see again, and keep moving. We tried to save money in practical ways. Find a public bath once a day to clean up, sleep at a cheap lodging place every 2 days if possible. And sometimes, if we were lucky, a driver would actually let us crash at their home. When that happened, it felt like a miracle. Strangers feeding you, giving you a roof, asking nothing back but a story. Those were the moments that made the whole trip feel worth it. And then, about 2 weeks into our journey, the nightmare began in a rural mountain area. Koshin region, inland, the kind of place where towns are spaced far apart, and the dark at night isn't city dark, it's real dark. Even now I can still hear the sound Kay kept making that night, because the thing that followed us later, the thing that still shows up in my dreams, announced itself with a cheerful whistle. That night, we'd been dropped off at a shabby convenience store along a national highway, and for 2 hours, we couldn't catch a single ride. It was unbearably hot, and we were so exhausted that our thoughts felt slow and blunt, like our brains were overheating along with our bodies. Kay kept muttering, half to himself, half to me. Why would they drop us here, of all places? If I'd known, I would have asked that last guy to let us sleep at his house. The guy had mentioned he lived about 10 minutes away by car, but it was too late. We didn't know where his house was, and we couldn't exactly chase down a stranger in the dark mountains. It was a little after midnight. We took turns, 30 minutes outside hitchhiking, then 30 minutes inside the convenience store, cooling off and drinking water, repeating the cycle like a ritual. The shop owner, an older man, listened to our story and laughed like we were characters in a harmless adventure. Huh, you boys are something else. Keep it up. If you can't catch anything, I'll drive you into town myself. That kind of rural warmth hits differently when you're tired. It felt like a safety net. Another hour and a half passed. Still no rides. Actually, it was worse than no rides. There were barely any cars at all. The road had gone quiet like the world had turned off. Kay was chatting with the owner, and I was seriously starting to think we should take his offer, when a camping van, a full camper, turned into the parking lot and rolled up under the lights. That was the start. The driver's door opened, and a man who looked about 60 stepped out and walked into the store. His outfit stopped my attention before his face did. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, the kind you associate with cowboys, and he was dressed in a formal suit underneath it, like someone had tried to merge Sunday church with old Western movie, and decided it made sense. I was inside resting at the time, so I watched him without thinking too hard. He filled a basket with a strange amount of small items, bandages and things like that, and then tossed in 2 large bottles of cola. Not 1, 2. When he reached the counter, I noticed something that immediately made my skin tighten. He kept staring at me. Not casual glances, not curiosity. A steady, focused stare, like he was watching a specific reaction he expected to see. I pretended not to notice. I kept reading the book magazine Rack had. Anything to avoid giving him the satisfaction of eye contact. He paid, left the store, and that should have been the end. But my shift outside was coming up, so I went out to switch with Kay. And there under the parking lot lights, Kay was already talking to him. Kay turned to me and said, like this was normal, "He says he'll give us a ride." I didn't like it. I can't explain it cleanly, because nothing concrete was wrong in that moment. But the feeling was there, clear as a physical thing. Still, when I looked at the man up close, he seemed friendly, normal enough. And I was tired. So tired that my mind was doing that dangerous thing where it tries to simplify everything. He's just an outdoors type, I told myself. That's why the hat. That's why the camper. We got in. The second my foot hit the floor inside the vehicle, I regretted it. Something was off. Not, "This seems shady." Not, "This seems illegal." But that deeper animal sense. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The kind you feel before you can explain it. The man had a family. Of course, a camper might have passengers. But what I saw inside wasn't what my brain expected. And my thoughts stalled for a moment, like a machine hitting an error. Father, the driver, around 60. Mother, in the passenger seat, looked closer to 70. And then behind them, twin sons. They looked 40 at minimum. But it wasn't their age that froze me. It was how identical they were in a way that didn't feel human. Same checkered shirts, same pants, same shoes, same hair, same posture, same expression. They sat in perfect symmetry, like someone had copied and pasted the same man twice and placed them side by side. Kay went quiet too. Not the normal, awkward quiet. The kind of quiet where a person is actively trying not to show they're unsettled. To be fair, twins exist. Identical people exist. There was nothing illegal about it. But the atmosphere inside that camper, being there with them, felt like stepping into a room where something had already happened and you weren't supposed to ask what. The driver gestured impatiently. "Go on, sit down." We sat almost automatically, like we were being pulled into their rhythm. We introduced ourselves. The father talked while he drove, giving what sounded like a casual family introduction, and that's when I noticed the mother properly. In the dim interior light, she looked wrong in a way that made my throat go tight. She wore a pure white summer dress, almost like a simple wedding dress, and her face was covered in heavy white makeup so thick it reminded me of stage makeup, like kabuki. Not subtle, not flattering, just white, like her skin had been replaced. Then came the names. The mother introduced herself as Saint Josephine, her voice dripping with a forced, holy reverence that felt utterly hollow. The father followed with Saint George, his eyes devoid of any actual faith. The father called himself Saint George. And the twins, he said, were named Aka and Ao. In Japanese, those words mean red and blue, like labels, not names, and he explained them by pointing. The one with the slightly reddish face was Aka, and the one with the bluish mark on his cheek was Ao. I remember thinking, who names their children like that? That was the moment Kay and I exchanged a look and decided we were getting out as soon as possible. These people weren't just quirky. Something was wrong with them. The parents kept talking to us, asking simple questions, making small talk, and we responded automatically because it felt dangerous not to. The twins didn't speak at all. They sat in the same posture, drinking cola from plastic bottles in perfect sync. When I heard them burp at the exact same time, like a practiced routine, my spine went cold. Kay tried to end it politely. Thank you so much, but you can drop us off around here. We hadn't even been driving 15 minutes. The father stopped him with a firm hand gesture, like you'd stop a child from running into the street. The mother turned slightly, smiling in a way that didn't fit her face, and said something that made no sense to us at the time. "Bears come out," she said, "tonight and tomorrow." We insisted anyway, standing halfway out of our seats. "No, really, this is fine." But the father didn't slow down. He just said, like it was the most normal thing in the world, "At least eat with us first." It was almost 2 in the morning. What meal was he talking about? Behind us, the twins had switched from cola to lollipops, sucking on them in sync like children in a mirror, still not saying a word. Kay leaned close to me and whispered, "I think we seriously got ourselves into something bad." I agreed, but the problem was we couldn't even talk properly. The parents kept addressing us, and if we failed to answer quickly, the father's voice sharpened. One time, I didn't catch what he said, and he snapped, "Did you hear me?" with a sudden edge that made the cabin feel smaller. The twins giggled, together, like one mouth. That was enough. We weren't just uncomfortable anymore. We were in danger. Maybe not the obvious kind, but the kind you don't gamble with. Then the camper turned off the highway, and then it turned again, onto a mountain road. Kay and I stood up fully, speaking louder now, forcing politeness through panic. "We're sorry, please, right here. Let us off. Thank you, really." The father kept driving. "They'll have food ready," he said, like we were expected somewhere. The mother added, "It's delicious. You should eat." We lowered our voices fast and urgent. If we have to run, we run. Not while it's moving. We wait until it stops, then we bolt. The camper drove for another 30 minutes and finally stopped on a flat area near what looked like a small town, a few lights visible in the distance. "We're here," the father said. And then, from the rear of the camper, behind the door in the back, I heard a small sound, like a baby babbling. My stomach dropped. "There's someone else back there." The mother cooed toward the back. "Mamoru, you're hungry too, aren't you?" Mamoru. That was the only name so far that sounded like an actual human name. Before I could process it, the twins spoke for the first time, and they spoke together, perfectly synchronized, like a rehearsed choir. "You can't let Mamoru out." The mother replied casually, "Well, yes, Mamoru is weak." And the father suddenly burst into laughter. Too loud, too sudden, like he couldn't hold it back. Kay hissed under his breath, in his own way of labeling danger. "They're insane. Totally insane. We're screwed." We got out of the camper. Outside, someone was tending a fire. For one dead second, my brain couldn't accept it. there's more of them. The man by the fire was massive, close to 2 meters tall, thick and broad, in a way that made him look like he was built for violence. He wore the same wide-brimmed cowboy-style hat, and, just like the father, he wore a formal suit, bizarre against the wilderness. The hat was pulled low enough that I couldn't see his face. On the front of the camper, in the firelight, I noticed a large cross symbol painted there, and it didn't feel comforting. It looked wrong, like a symbol used by someone who didn't understand what it meant. The big man was whistling. It was cheerful, confident, perfectly controlled. And while he whistled, he used a huge knife to butcher something on a surface near the fire. I could see furred legs, some kind of animal, a boar maybe, a wild dog. I don't know. I only know that whatever it was, it made my stomach turn. And the last thing in the world I wanted was to eat anything cooked over that fire. We were thinking about running, but the man's size and that knife pinned us in place with pure fear. It wasn't dramatic bravery versus cowardice. It was simple. If that man decided to grab you, you weren't getting away easily. The father said, "Come on, sit down." The big man set the knife down and started adding seasoning into a pot that was already bubbling. And the smell that rose wasn't hunger. It was nausea. Kay tried the only move we had left. He nodded toward the woods and said, I need to pee." I said the same thing immediately because it was clearly a signal. Run. The mother waved us off like we were children. Go ahead, go ahead. We walked past the side of the camper and angled toward the trees, trying to move casually so they wouldn't react. And that's when it happened. In a rear window of the camper, suddenly, violently, something slammed its face and hands against the glass. It was not a normal child. Its forehead was a bloated, translucent dome, with eyes set so low they seemed to be sliding down its face. The hands were horrific. Swollen, doughy masses of flesh that didn't seem to have bones beneath them, as if the joints were wrong or the flesh had been inflated. It pressed itself against the window and screamed high and desperate, "Mama!" That was it. Whatever line we'd been balancing on snapped. We ran. We didn't run like people jogging away from trouble. We ran like prey. Behind us, I heard the parents shouting something, but we didn't stop to understand words. We crashed into the forest and kept going, slipping, falling, rolling down uneven ground, branches cutting our arms, dirt filling our mouths. Kay kept gasping. "What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?" I forced the only plan I could think of through my throat. We have to get down the mountain, down to a road. We had one cheap flashlight between us, barely strong enough to carve out a thin tunnel of visibility, and we ran downhill, blindly trusting gravity like it was an escape route. But the forest didn't cooperate. From the clearing where we'd gotten out, we'd seen town lights not far away. It had looked close. After an hour of running, there were no lights, nothing. We were lost. Our bodies hit a limit at the same time. We collapsed, panting so hard it felt like our lungs were tearing, hearts slamming, legs shaking. Kay croaked, "Do you think those freaks will chase us?" I tried to sound rational because rational sounded safe. They're not going to eat us or something. This isn't a movie. They're just a weird, insane family. But that thing at the window, that thing was real. Kay looked at me and asked the first practical question that actually mattered. "What about our bags?" I checked my pockets. Money and the phone are here. Clothes are gone. We have to leave them. Kay, probably from stress overload, suddenly started laughing, thin, cracked laughter, and I did too, because sometimes your brain releases pressure the only way it can. But once the laughter died, the forest smell came back, thick and wet, and the darkness returned like a lid closing over us. We'd escaped the family, yes, but now we were two exhausted idiots, stranded in a mountain forest at night. Kay said quietly, "Maybe we should just stay still until morning." That woman said bears, and even if it's not bears, wild dogs, boars. I didn't want to sit there a second longer than necessary, but he wasn't wrong. In pitch black forest, running can kill you faster than fear can. We found a rotting old tree trunk and sat, backs against it, trying to rest without fully sleeping. At some point, our exhaustion dragged us under. I woke up with a hard jolt and checked the time out of reflex. A little after 4 a.m. The sky was barely lightening, gray, not day, but not pure night. Kay wasn't beside me. My heart jumped, and as I started to stand, I saw him right behind me, holding a thick stick like a weapon, body tense, listening. "What are you doing?" I whispered. He answered without looking at me. "You don't hear that?" I started to speak. He cut me off sharply. "Shh." And then I heard it, faint, far away, threading through the trees like something playful that didn't belong out there. A whistle, not random, not messy. A clean, confident tune, the Mickey Mouse March, the same tune the big man had been whistling at the fire. Kay stared at me, eyes wide. "That guy, he's looking for us." We ran again. Now the growing light made it easier to move, and we fell less, and we covered ground faster. After 20 or 30 minutes, we reached a wide open area that looked like an abandoned parking lot, maybe for hikers or a small roadside stop back when it was used. Through the trees, we could see signs of a town. We'd come down. We were close. Kay suddenly doubled over. "My stomach! I have to go! Now!" There was a small restroom building at the edge of the lot, old and stained and clearly not cleaned often. I didn't want either of us going inside, not with that whistle still in our ears, but Kay was past negotiation. "I'll go fast," he said and rushed in. I stayed outside scanning the trees like paranoia could act as armor. From inside, Kay complained loudly, "There is toilet paper, but it's like sandpaper and there's moths stuck to it. This is disgusting." Then he shouted, sharp and startled, "Hey, who's crying?" "What?" I snapped. "In the women's bathroom. Listen, you don't hear that?" And once he said it, I did. A woman crying, soft at first, then wavering, then more intense, like she was trying not to be heard but couldn't control it. We both went quiet. Who would be in the women's restroom here in a deserted lot at this hour crying? Kay called out again, louder. "Are you okay in there?" No answer, just crying. He lowered his voice and said, "Go check, it sounds worse." I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed not to step into that building, but the situation made it hard to walk away. If there really was a woman in trouble, ignoring it felt wrong in a way I couldn't swallow. So I forced my legs to move, walked into the women's side, and toward the stall where the sound was strongest. "Excuse me," I called, trying to keep my voice calm. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" No answer. The crying intensified, louder, more desperate, like my words were making it worse. I tried again, gentler. "Are you not feeling well? I'm just checking if you're okay." Still nothing but the crying, swelling like a tide. And then I heard a car, an engine climbing toward the parking lot. My skin went tight all at once. I ran out and banged on the men's stall door. "Kay, get out, now!" "What? Why?" "Car. I hear a car, just get out." He rushed, fumbling, yanking up his jeans, and the moment he stepped out, headlights cut into the parking lot. A camper van rolled in. The same camper. I knew it immediately, and so did Kay. That stupid cross symbol. The shape. The presence of it like a sickness returning. We didn't have time to run into the woods. If we bolted, they'd see us. If we ran downhill, we'd be caught in the open. The only blind spot was the narrow space behind the restroom building, where the land dropped away into a small cliff edge. We sprinted around the back and pressed ourselves against the wall, balancing on that tiny strip of ground, trying not to breathe loud enough to exist. Kay whispered fast, panicked. "Did they see us? Did they see us?" The engine stopped. Doors opened. Footsteps crunched on gravel toward the restroom. There was barely space to stand back there. Maybe 5 meters from us, the ground fell away. If they came around and spotted us, our last option would be jumping, praying we didn't break our legs. I kept thinking, please just pee and leave. Please just leave. But the crying didn't stop. It kept going, loud enough to make my teeth hurt. Part of me thought, if that woman is real and they find her, and the thought made my stomach twist. A man entered the men's restroom. I recognized the voice. Father. He sighed loudly, relieved, and said, "Ah, that's nice. Hallelujah, hallelujah." I heard more footsteps, more than one. The twins, maybe. Then, the mother's voice from the women's side, "There's no toilet paper." The woman kept crying. And the family, none of them reacted to it. Not even a pause, not even a question. That was the strangest part, the most chilling part. Because if you hear someone crying in a restroom, you react. Even cruel people react. They acted like it wasn't there. A few minutes passed. Footsteps moved out. Voices drifted away. Still crying. Kay and I stared at each other in the cramped darkness behind the building, silently asking the same question. How? Then, faintly, I heard the father say something like, "Let's wait for underscore, underscore, underscore. He'll be here soon." I couldn't catch the name. There was a sound like a slap, then a noise like someone whimpering, almost like the twins were crying or mimicking crying, and then their laughter. The whole thing felt like a staged performance we weren't meant to understand. Kay's face tightened with anger in the middle of fear, and he whispered, "We should steal the camper. We should jump them while the big guy isn't here. That's what they're waiting for, right? That big bastard." But I shook my head. As long as they didn't know we were here, our best chance was to stay invisible and let them leave. And the crying, whatever it was, kept dragging at my mind. I told Kay, once the camper left, we'd check the women's restroom. He didn't like it, but he agreed. About 15 minutes later, the mother's voice rose again, bright and sing-song. "Oh, there you are." Someone had arrived. A moment later, footsteps approached the restroom again, and I heard it before I saw anything. That whistle! The Mickey Mouse March. The big man strolled in whistling like he was arriving at a picnic. He went into the men's restroom, still whistling, and at the same time the frantic screams from the women's stall were suddenly drowned out by that cheerful, high-pitched whistle. Then, absolute silence. Not a fade out, but a sudden, violent cut, as if the sound itself had been severed with a knife. Dead. No fade out, no footsteps, no dragging, no scuffle. Just silence. My brain couldn't accept it. What happened? How did it stop like that? The big man walked out, the whistle continuing, like nothing in the world had changed. I risked lifting my head just enough to see, and all I saw was his back, hat low, suit hanging from those huge shoulders. Then he shouted suddenly, cheerfully, like he'd found something amusing. "Ah, so this is where it was." I dropped back down, heart slamming. Kay clutched his stick so hard his knuckles looked white. "They found us?" "I don't think so," I whispered, but my voice didn't sound convinced even to me. Then I heard the parents and the twins responding, laughing, talking like they were celebrating something. "Yeah, that's right. A great sin." Crying and screaming like crazy, the big man crowed. "Yes, yes," the mother chirped. He cried, he repented. Hallelujah." They were laughing, but the words didn't sound like they were talking about us. A moment later, the camper engine started and the vehicle pulled out of the lot. We stayed frozen until the sound faded completely. Daylight had arrived. When I was sure they were gone, I sprinted into the women's restroom and threw open every stall. Empty, all of them. The locks were broken like they'd been snapped from the inside long ago. Nothing. Kay came in behind me, touched my shoulder, and said quietly, "You knew, didn't you?" "Knew what?" "That there was no one. Not halfway through from the beginning. There was never anyone crying in here." I stared at him, unable to accept it. We both heard it, clearly. The same crying growing louder. How could that be a hallucination we shared? And then I remembered. The family never reacted, not once, like it wasn't there. We decided not to follow the main road right away. If we ran into that camper again, we'd be trapped. So we took a forest path toward the highway instead, figuring the town wasn't far, and now the visibility was good. We walked without talking. Eventually, we reached the highway. But we had no spare clothes, no bags, no supplies. The first thought that came to me was the convenience store owner, the kind man who'd promised to help. Traffic was heavier now that it was morning, and even after what we'd been through, we managed to flag down a truck. The driver looked confused when he saw us, filthy and shaken, but when we gave a vague story, lost while camping, ended up in the woods, he nodded and agreed to take us. He knew the convenience store and said he stopped there often. About an hour later, we pulled into that same parking lot, and the owner's reaction changed everything. We started telling him about the camper, about the family, about being taken into the mountains, about escaping. Halfway through, his face turned doubtful. "A camper?" he said slowly. "I didn't see any camper last night." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean you didn't see it?" "It came here. The man came inside. You rang him up." The owner shook his head. "No. You two suddenly walked out and started heading down the road. I even followed you for a bit and called after you, but you kept ignoring me, so I got annoyed and stopped. I figured you were embarrassed to ask for a ride and decided to walk. That's what I saw. So, what are you saying happened?" My mind went cold. There had been another employee on shift too, but he wasn't there now, maybe off duty. A thought flashed through me, sharp with paranoia. Is he part of it? Is this a setup? Kay caught my eye, and I could tell he'd had the same thought. He said quickly, "I need the bathroom," and pulled me with him. Inside the restroom, Kay whispered, "What do you think?" I whispered back, "He doesn't seem like he's lying, but if he is part of it, why go through this much effort? This is insane. We should ask the truck driver to take us farther. Now. We were turning to leave when, from inside a stall, I heard a toilet flush, and immediately after it, someone whistled. The Mickey Mouse March. My anger surged so hard it drowned the fear, probably because it was daylight, probably because my body was exhausted of being terrified. Kay kicked the stall door. "Come out, now." A teenage boy in a school uniform yelped, startled, stumbling out like he thought he was about to get stabbed. Kay froze, then immediately backed off, laughing awkwardly, bowing his head. Sorry, my bad." The kid looked confused and offended, but he left, and thankfully it didn't seem like anyone outside had heard the commotion. We went back to the counter. Kay forced calm into his voice and asked the truck driver, "Would you be able to take us into town?" "Just to the next town is fine." And he placed a carton of cigarettes on the counter, same brand the driver had been smoking. The driver looked at the cigarettes, then at us, and finally nodded. All right. We didn't even consider going to the police. How would we explain it? A whistling man in a suit, a camper family with saint names, crying that wasn't there, a creature pressing against a window screaming, "Mama," and a camper that may or may not have existed in the first place. We didn't want justice. We wanted distance. The truck driver happened to be heading our way anyway, and with the cigarettes, he seemed almost cheerful about it, like it made him feel appreciated. Somewhere along the drive, exhaustion finally knocked us out, both of us sleeping like the body does when its decided survival comes before memory. I woke at a service area, an old rest stop, because the truck had stopped. The driver bought us yakisoba, and we ate inside the cab like two starving animals, barely speaking. The truck started again. Kay fell back asleep. I stayed awake, staring out the window, replaying everything. Who were those people? What was that crying? What was that thing in the camper window? And then I saw it, a camper van parked at the service area. My entire body went rigid. "Stop!" I said, voice tight. The driver looked at me. "What?" "Please, pull over." He did, confused. Kay woke up, blinking. "What's wrong?" I pointed. Kay followed my finger and went still. The camper was there. No doubt about it, the same shape, the same color, the same cross on the front, but it was ruined. Not a little old. Ruined like it had been abandoned for decades. The body panels were warped and peeling. Rust everywhere. Tires blown out. Windows shattered. It looked like a wreck that should have been towed away long ago. Not something that had driven into a convenience store last night. Kay whispered, "What is this?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I told the driver, 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. Please wait. We hurried over. Up close it was worse. The smell inside was rotten and stale, like a sealed room opened after years. We forced the corroded door open, and then Kay shouted, voice breaking, Those are our bags." They were. The same 2 backpacks we'd left behind in the camper when we ran. But they looked aged, like the camper. The fabric was brittle, crumbling into dust at my touch. Our bags looked like they'd been rotting in that rusted husk for decades. A lifetime of decay compressed into a single, impossible night. Inside, our clothes and disposable items were also degraded, warped by time. Kay kept repeating, How? What is this?" I didn't have answers. I only had the urgent need to get out of that camper. "Let's go," I said, "now!" Kay nodded, trembling. Go. We were stepping back out when we heard a sound from the innermost door inside the camper. A small clatter, like something shifting behind it. The door was closed. Neither of us had the courage to open it. Even now, part of me wonders if I misheard it, if it could have been an animal, if fear made it into something else. But back then, in that moment, I know what I heard. From behind that inner door, a small voice called, "Mama!" We screamed and sprinted back to the truck. And when we reached it, the driver's face was pale, like he'd seen something that didn't fit into his world. He started the engine without a word and pulled out fast. Kay and I spoke at the same time, my mouth opening to ask what he saw, his to demand it. The driver swallowed and said, "Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I imagined it. But that camper, you're sure no one was in it besides you two, right?" Kay snapped. "What did you see?" The driver hesitated. I thought I saw something. Like a shape. Maybe a shadow. Like someone wearing a wide brim hat. Like a cowboy hat or something. Just for a second. And then I got this chill, and right by my ear I heard a whistle. My blood turned cold. I asked very carefully, "What tune?" He tried to laugh it off. "I don't know. Something familiar. I'm probably just tired." But I knew. It was the Mickey Mouse March. We drove in silence for about 30 minutes. As the town came closer, I finally asked the question that had been burning in me. The question I'd been afraid to ask because I didn't want the answer. Back near that highway, the mountain area, was there ever an incident there? Something bad? The driver frowned. Incident? I don't know. There are a bunch of mountains connected out there. But I have heard people say there was a case once. A woman got killed somewhere around that area. Just rumors, though. Kay cut in immediately, voice sharp. A woman, was it near a restroom? The driver blinked. Yeah, I think so. Something like that. That night we checked into a hotel in town and slept like we'd been drugged. 2 days later, we took the bullet train home. We didn't talk about it much after that, not the details, not out loud, because saying it made it real in a way that didn't feel safe. Even now, years later, that time returns at random. Who were those people? Were they real? Just a bizarre, dangerous family? Were they something else? What was that crying we heard so clearly? What did it mean that the camper and our bags looked like they'd aged decades overnight? Kay and I are older now, creeping toward our mid-30s. We got jobs. We live normal lives. We still meet sometimes, still laugh like we always did, and I'll admit, his bright, unfiltered personality helped me survive the memory in a strange way. Like if he could keep smiling, then maybe it didn't own us completely. But some things stayed. Kay still can't look at camper vans without feeling sick. And for me, that tune became a trigger. Not long ago, I went to a group meetup, and toward the end, one of the girls' phone rang, and her ringtone was that song, The Mickey Mouse March. My heart stopped so hard it felt like my body forgot how to breathe. And even now, every once in a while, in the middle of a normal dream, I'll hear a clean, cheerful whistle drifting in from somewhere I can't see. And I'll wake up with my hands clenched, because in my head, it's always the same thought. He's looking for us again.